Hi, I'm Tiffany. Today, I'm going to show you how to work with numbers and patterns.
Numbers and patterns. When dealing with numbers and patterns, there's two things I want to point out to you and make sure you know what I mean when I mention the word pattern. When I mention the word pattern, I want you to realize that I'm talking about the way that your numbers change, okay? So if you were to have a number and you say, okay, then after you have this number, add 2 to it. Then after that, you're going to subtract 1. Then after that, you're going to multiply by 3. The adding 2, the subtracting 1, the multiplying by 3, that is the way your numbers are changing, or the way you're manipulating your numbers, okay? When you hear me say sequence, that is the set of numbers you see after you follow a pattern. So it's the result you get. So if after you add 2, you end up with 17, then you subtract that 1 and you end up with 16, the numbers that you result with, so like your answer is the sequence. The pattern is how you got your answer, okay? Let's move into example number 1, and some of this will be clarified, and I'll show you what to do when you see examples that are dealing with numbers and patterns. Example number 1. Now you can probably look at this and already say, that's easy. I already know what to fill in those blanks with. I intentionally wanted to start with a super easy example because it gives you the general understanding of what's going on. When we get to the more difficult examples, you're going to be grateful that we started like this because you understand what's going on. So we start with 10. We go from 10 to 20. I like to draw a little loop. It just keeps me on track. To go from 10 to 20, what I did was add 10. So I'm going to write plus 10 directly underneath to remind myself of what I did. To go from 20 to 30, I also added 10 again. So I'm writing my plus 10 in. To go from 30 to 40, that was also plus 10. 40 to 50, another plus 10. Okay, so if you remember in the last slide I explained patterns and sequences. Down here, these plus 10s, this is my pattern. I add 10 every time to get my sequence. Remember, the sequence is the result that you get. So the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, that's my result. That's my sequence, okay? That's like my answer that I get from following the pattern, okay? So if we were to continue from our 50, we would take 50, we would add 10 to it, and what are you going to get? Of course, 60. You could really probably do these in your head, but again, I want you to see what we're doing with a simple example so that when we get to a more difficult example, you know exactly what's going on. 70, and then we end up with 80. So to fill in the last 3 spaces, we're gonna add 10 all 3 times, and we're gonna end up with 60, 70, and 80. Let's move on to example number 2. Example number 2. I have 50, and I go to 49, then 48, then 47. So again, this example is pretty simple. It looks like we're just subtracting 1. So we're going to write a loop, subtract 1, write a loop, subtract 1, subtract 1. Okay? If I continue that, so I'm going to subtract 1 here. That means I would end up with a 46 because 47 minus 1 would be 46. Then I need to subtract 1 again. That would give me a 45. And I'm going to subtract 1 again, and that gives me a 44. Yay! Okay? So, to fill in our answers for example number 2, we continue to subtract 1 to continue our pattern, and our sequence ends up being 46, 45, 44. Let's move on to example number 3. Example number 3. Okay, immediately when I see this, I can tell that this one is a little more complicated. let me tell you how I can see that right away. To go from 2 to 6, our number increases, our sequence increases, okay? That's 2 is smaller than 6, so that means we're increasing. To go from 6 to 4, that's a decrease, okay? So first, before we even begin, I already know that our pattern is not going to be the same the whole way through. The first two examples, we added 10 every step of the way. It was like plus 10, plus 10, plus 10 the whole time. The example number 2, we subtracted 1 the whole time. It was like minus 1, minus 1, minus 1. Here, we're not going to have that. Here, we're going to alternate our pattern. We're going to be doing one thing one time and then something else another time. Okay? So we're going to have to figure it out. And sometimes, I'll tell you, there could be more than one option that could work in the beginning, but then by the end of your sequence, it does not work. So you have to guess and check sometimes. So, for example number 3, let's see, we just have to guess really. To go from 2 to 6, what do I do? I'm going to guess that they just added 4. But it doesn't have to be addition. It could be multiplication. You don't just have to use addition and subtraction. We can multiply, divide, add, or subtract here, really. Now, to go from the 6 to the 4, let's guess that they subtracted 2. Because that would get you there. But this pattern would need to continue throughout. So let's see if it does. To go from 4 to 8, yes, that could be a plus 4. Okay, let me tell you something. This is a good sign. We have a repeat. We added 4 to go between our first two numbers, and then we're adding 4 again over here. So that's a good sign. If we subtract 2 to go from the 8 to 6, then that would like show that the pattern does look like it's plus 4 minus 2 plus 4 minus 2, and that would be a good thing. So let's see. To go from 8 to 6, can I subtract 2 to get that? Yes, I can. So that's what I'm going to put down. Subtract 2. Yay. Okay, so if I were to follow my pattern, then the next step would be plus 4. 6 plus the 4 would be 10. Okay, see, it's getting a little bit more complicated because I have to think. Okay, whoa, I had a 6. Now what do I do to it? Oh yeah, I'm on the plus 4 loop. This is why I continue with these loops. I suggest strongly that you write the loops out, because when your patterns get really complicated, you're going to be like, what? Where am I? I don't know. I'm confused. Write the loops, y'all. Okay. Add 4. Now where am I? Okay, now I'm on 10. We're going to loop it over here. Now it's time to subtract 2. If I have 10 and I take 2 away, I'm going to end up with 8. Okay? Now it's time to add 4. Loop it over. What's 8 plus 4? 12. Alright. So we finished our example number 3. It was a little trickier this time because our pattern alternated. It wasn't just a simple same thing every time. So our sequence that we ended up with in the last 3 spaces were 10, 8, and 12. Let's move on to example number 4. Example number 4. Okay, my first thought here is, whoa, these numbers are pretty big pretty quickly. I start with 4, and I'm going to end with like 40 and 120. That means we're really moving some ground. That means if I'm just going to sit here and add 2 and little numbers like 4, it's going to take me a long time to get to 120. So I'm just trying to tell you what you can do when you see problems like this, how you can think to sort of figure it out. And so my first thought process is, I'm probably going to have to do something bigger than adding. So I'm going to guess that with this particular example, I'm probably going to be multiplying, because multiplying is going to increase my number more quickly. You know, if I have 4 and I add 2 to it, I'm going to get 6. But if I have 4 and I multiply it by 2, I'm going to get 8. So you can see numbers move more quickly when you're multiplying. So that's just something you can keep in mind. When you see numbers that are getting big pretty quickly, it's a good chance that you're probably going to be multiplying, okay? So you're just going to have to look at it and kind of guess and check and see. Let's see. They go from 4 to 12. What can we do? Let's first start with our loop. This could be 4 plus 8. That would give me 12. It could also be 4 times 3. That could give me 12. So we're just going to have to guess one. Well, I just did that whole spiel and told you that most likely we're going to be multiplying because this thing ends up way at 120 pretty soon. So let's start with multiplying by 3 and see how it works. Okay, let's do our next loop. You go from 12 to 13, what could we do there? Well, I guess that could just be an add 1. So let's try it. You go from 13 to 39. Okay, I don't know, what this jump is because these are like some odd numbers. This is how it's going to be when you're doing your homework and stuff. You're going to look at the numbers, you're going to be like, wow, I don't really know how they went from 13 to 39. So what could you do? You could come out to the side of your paper and you could subtract and see what you get to see if there's a relationship, like a pattern that fits what's already going on. 9 minus 3 would be 6, and your 3 minus 1 would be 2, so that's 26. So you could say add 26. I mean, that's a possibility. But let's look at the pattern that we already have here that exists. We already have a multiply by 3 and then add 1. So let's see if it's time for that multiply by 3 to repeat. So let's see if 13 times 3 gives me 39. So I'm coming out to the side of my paper or whatever space you have, wherever you're working. And it looks like it equals exactly 39. So it looks like we're on the right track. Let's add multiply by 3. And then go from 39 to 40. Oh, yep, that's a plus 1. So the pattern is being followed. So it looks like we're doing everything correctly. Let's see. 40 times 3. Does that give me 120? Yes, it does. I could do that very quickly in my head. Let me give you a quick tip how I could. If you remove both of these zeros, then you're just dealing with the number 4 and the number 12. So I know quickly that 4 times 3 is 12. So that's a way to quickly do multiplication when you're dealing with larger numbers. If both numbers have zeros, you can take the zeros off. So we're going to multiply this by 3, or write that in. Now it's time to add our 1. When we do that, we end up with 121. And then we're going to multiply by 3. And you probably don't know what 121 is. So you're going to come to the side of your paper. I'm doing it this way because I'm trying to explain to you what you need to do when you see this same problem yourself. You may not know what 121 times 3 is, so you have to calculate it. You have to come out to the side of your paper and work it out. So you have 3 times 1, and that's 3. And then you have 3 times 2, and that's 6. And 3 times 1, and that's 3. So you end up with 363 for this space. Whoa, we have some really big numbers this time, don't we? Then we're going to add 1. I can do that in my head. And that's 364. So for example number 4, our pattern is multiply by 3, then add 1, multiply by 3, and add 1, and so on. And the last 3 numbers in our sequence that we ended up with were 121, 363, and 364. Yeah. Let's move on to example number 5. Example number 5. We start with a 3, we go to a 6. From that 6, we go to a 10. Then a 15. Let's see what we can figure out. To go from 3 to 6, let's try multiplying by 2. The number's 21 down here. That's not super big, but let's just guess that we're going to multiply. To go from 6 to 10, let's guess that we're going to add 4. To go from 10 to 15, let's see, can our pattern repeat yet? Multiply by 2. No, that doesn't work. We could add 5 though. Let's try that. Okay, to go from 15 to 21, what could we do? Looks like we could add 6. Okay, what's this pattern down here? We have a multiply by 3, and then we have plus 4, plus 5, plus 6. Let me tell you something. I wrote this pattern down on purpose. Hopefully you're thinking, and hopefully you see what is going on here. The situation is, I started incorrectly, and you're probably going to do this when you're working your problem. So you have to be able to look out for patterns that exist even around your errors. Okay? The sequence here should be increasing the number that you're adding each time. So this multiply by 2 is not actually part of the pattern, but in the beginning you have to guess with something. So that's what I just chose to guess with. But this should really be plus 3. So we should add 3 to get to the 6. And then this should be plus 4, plus 5, plus 6. So see, this is a different type of pattern. Before, we've had alternating patterns where we were multiplying by 3, then adding 1. Multiply 3, add 1, and continue that way. So you're dealing with the same two terms that you're working with. This time, if we were to continue this sequence, which we will in a second, we're going to add a brand new number every single time. Sometimes your patterns are going to be this way, okay? So this is why I wanted to take each step one at a time so you can see what's going on. So I'm going to cross this out here because my first guess was not correct, okay? Like I said, I did that on purpose just so you can see what you're going to have to do when you have problems like this. So this would really be a plus 3 from the beginning. So we're going to add 3, add 4, add 5, add 6. So what time is it right now? It's time to add 7. If I add 7, I end with 28. Then it's time to add 8. 28 plus 8 is 36. And then we're going to add 9. 36 plus 9 is 45. So, our pattern here for example number 5 was a little different. That's okay. Sometimes they're going to be different like this. We're adding numbers that get gradually larger, by 1 digit larger. So, add 3, add 4, add 5, add 6, add 7, add 8, add 9. And it would continue on depending on how many spaces they wanted you to add in. So the resulting sequence that we ended up writing in was 28, 36, and 45. Let's move on to example number 6. Example number 6. Let's see if we can figure out this pattern. We're just going to have to guess again. To go from 4 to 6, I could add 2. Okay. To go from 6 to 10, I could add 4. Let's try that. To go from 10 to 16, I could add 6. I'm not seeing a pattern 100% yet. I'm not 100% sure. To go from 16 to 24, I can add 8. Okay, did you pick up on the pattern? We're increasing by even numbers. So we start with 2, then 4, then 6, then 8. So now this one's going to be 10. Okay. So this is similar to the last style, except it's not going by single digits. It's increasing by even numbers only. So to go from 24 to the next, that would be 34. Now we're going to add 12. And that would give us 46. And then we're going to add 14. And that would give us 60. So, the pattern for example number 6 was increase or add by even numbers. So, plus 2, plus 4, plus 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. And the resulting sequence that we ended up with was 36, 46, 60. That's my last example. Thanks for watching.